tell you a quick story that puts this, I think, neatly, about jobs programs. Milton Friedman used to tell the story of being in Asia, and he was taken by government officials to see a vast canal project. And they were very proud of it and showing him how it was being built. And he asked, he said, well, I'm puzzled, all this work, why are they using small shovels and not earth-moving equipment? The answer was, oh, Professor Friedman, you have not understood. This is a job creation program. And then he said, oh, now I understand. But I have another question. Why have you not issued them with spoons? You could have a lot more jobs if you gave them spoons rather than shovels. There would be more work for everyone to do. That would be a jobs creation program. The point is that the purpose of economic activity is not just to be busy. We can be busy in lots of different ways, but to add value to the world, to take things that have a cost of such and such and create value. That's really what market economy is about. It's characterized in this process by what Joseph Schumpeter called creative destruction. I think to understand the characteristics of free market capitalism, this is one of the most powerful quotes in economics written in the last 100 years. The problem that is usually being visualized is how capitalism administers existing structures as we see them now, where the relevant problem is how it creates and destroys them. Take a very simple example. When I was a boy, there was a career called typewriter repairman. And you could train in typewriter repair schools to be a typewriter repairman. There were companies. You had to wear a uniform like a UPS man, go to the office, repair the typewriter. All over, typewriter repair shops in every town. They're all gone. I haven't seen a typewriter repairman in, well, decades. I haven't seen any typewriter repair shops. A good friend of mine told me a while ago that his 5-year-old son came in one day and he said, Daddy, I saw something very funny. Let me take you, and show it. It's a computer with no screen. How does it work? Typewriter. Well, so what happened to those people? Well, here's the inside story that's been left out by the mainstream media. They all died. They staggered out of their typewriter repair shops and perished, victims of the cruelty of capitalism. Of course, that didn't happen. They did other things. That industry disappeared. It was destroyed. And new industries took its place. Among them, the computer industry, which can do everything the typewriter can do except jam the keys, and a lot more. I can communicate, I can play music, I can do all sorts of things. Constant process of creative destruction, and it's going on all around us as old ways of doing things are destroyed and new take their place. First, very quickly, we've seen free market capitalism has been put on trial. Some people assert that it's immoral, it's unfair, and it's responsible for the economic crisis we've experienced since 2008. I think it's a case of a faulty or mistaken identity. We think about the institutions that should be associated with the present crisis. Why it happened now and not 6 years ago, or 8 years ago, or 12 years ago, or 2 years from now. The first one that comes to my mind is the Federal Reserve. That is not an institution of the free market. It's a state institution, has monopoly state powers, and they can set the interest rates and impose them, if you will, on the market. The overnight interest rate that the Fed charged from 2004 to 2006 was negative, the real interest rate. That's really an amazing, mind-stretching concept. What is a negative interest rate? That is to say the nominal rate, that's the number, 1%, 2%. But if there's inflation that's expected of 3%, the real interest rate will be negative because you're being paid back in dollars that have depreciated in value. Under a real normal interest rate, if I borrow money from Mr. Holm back here, I say $100, I'd like to borrow it so I can go buy something now. He'll say, okay, on condition that you pay me back after some set period of time, $105, 5% interest rate over that time period. That's a normal interest rate. We've exchanged present money, he gave me present $100, in exchange for future money, 105 future dollars. But under a negative interest rate, I go and I ask for $100, and he says, okay, only on the condition you bring me back 95. So I'm being paid to borrow money. We ran a big experiment. We found out the answer to the question, how much money will people borrow when you pay them to borrow? Well, we now know the answer, a lot. You'll borrow a lot of money. And there was an orgy of borrowing that was then directed into home ownership. Thanks to Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae. Freddie Mac, it says, we make home possible. Canada doesn't have a Freddie Mac or a Fannie Mae. They don't even have a home mortgage deduction. Oddly enough, Canadians have homes without a gigantic government programs to make them available. The FHA, Federal Housing Administration, home ownership here, guaranteed loans, and to make sure everyone could have a house without having to do that boring thing of setting aside money, they lowered the down payment rate. Go through that very quickly. For about 60 years, it was 20%. So I buy a $100,000 house, go to the bank, borrow $80,000 mortgage, then I take $20,000 from what used to be called, and some of you students might write this down, savings. You would save money until you had $20,000. Then you would take that with that to the bank and buy a $100,000 house. If you stop paying your mortgage, you lose the $20,000. So you have an incentive not to stop paying your mortgage. That was lowered to 3% federally guaranteed home loans. Make sure everybody can have a house without having to do all that boring savings. So now I borrow $97,000, put $3,000 from savings, and you know what it was in 2008 at the beginning of the year the Bush administration rolled out? 0% down payment, federally guaranteed mortgages. And we saw the proliferation of ninja loans. No income, no job or assets, which is to say college students, were being issued mortgages to buy houses, which was effectively buying apartment space for your college career. And then, when you graduate college, you sell it for $12,000 more than you paid. It's good for you. It's wonderful so long as the price keeps going up. But then it stops. And the bubble burst, and we got stuck with this big problem. So that is a feature of state interventionism, not of the market economy. We don't associate any of those institutions with the market. And now we've seen one intervention piled on top of another. General Motors had decided they didn't like making cars anymore, in effect, and become a finance company. Their cars were not selling, and then when the crash hit, they were essentially a finance company. They went into bankruptcy. But rather than allowing the rule of law to function, allowing the bondholders to take over and reorganize the company according to standard bankruptcy law, they were taken over, and now we have the new GM, Government Motors. This is a government-owned company. We have been lied to, told, don't worry, we paid back the money that was advanced. This is not true. The payback was with additional tranches of governmental capital. This is a government-owned firm. And we now are going to witness the new Volt, the first car designed by a congressional committee. I can't wait to drive one of these automobiles. And Solyndra. Solyndra is an example of pure cronyism. I'm not going to pick just on the Obama administration. It's endemic to both parties. Neither one has a monopoly on corruption and cronyism. But the emails that came out of the White House were really shocking. Pushing the approval of this loan guarantee because the vice president was going to cut a ribbon at the Solyndra factory. And the guarantee had to be in place before he was there. This is a feature of interventionism. More interventionism causes more cronyism. If the solution is more interventionism, we should expect more cronyism. And I found that typically, when you go and talk to people in the Occupy Wall Street movement, other movements like that, what is it that makes you angry about what you call capitalism? It's cronyism that makes them angry, and they have every right to be. Bailouts, subsidies, insider special deals, all the revolving door between Wall Street and the Treasury Department, Goldman Sachs having its employees running through the Treasury Department. This is not free market capitalism. This is ugly cronyism. I'd like to share a message from one of our Russian partners. Hope this will play properly on the nature of cronyism. Oops.
You know, people in our country, in our region, suffered so long from a lack of capitalism, as the rest of the world benefited from it. We suffered from limitations and slavery, while others benefited from freedom and rights. What we have now in Russia is an improvement, sure, over the horrors of socialism, but it is less free market capitalism than cronyism, a system of power and privileges. Free market capitalism means full equality before the law and no privileges for anyone. Free market capitalism is the key not only to widespread prosperity and social progress, but to human dignity. Capitalism is the only economic system suited to the dignity of the human being. Economic logic requires free market capitalism. Yes, it is so, but even more so, it is required by morality.
So the system that they have in Russia is capitalism, cronyism writ large, and I fear that that is the direction that we're moving in this country. A few words then about the poison discourse about capitalism. I'd like to start with a couple of terms like competition. What words come to mind when we talk about competition? Dog eat dog and cutthroat. If you think about those are very violent, terrible images. Imagine cutting a person's throat, horrible. And then also imagine, visualize, close your eyes, a schnauzer eating a chihuahua. It's a very horrible image of violence and harm. So competition is characterized with these violent images. But if you think about it, in the market economy, people compete, firms compete in order to cooperate with me. Tailors, restaurants, food vendors, computer makers are all competing in order to be able to cooperate with me, to offer me better value, lower price, better service. Exchange, often characterized as selfish and greedy. All you want is the lowest price or the highest price if you're the seller. But we need to remember that when people are free to agree or disagree, free to say yes or no, it's mutually beneficial. That's the sign. If you say yes to it, it was a benefit to you. You got something greater in value than that which you had to give up. And if you say no, it's because this wasn't a good deal for you. Profit, also, the words that tip off the tongue, obscene, windfall. Terms like justified profit are a bit artificial. You have to really force them together. They're not part of our common repertoire of expressions. But if you think about it, they're measures of value added, profit and loss. And the key also, the one that we've forgotten, is loss. We've moved into a system in which profits may be private, but if the firm tanks, the losses are socialized. And that is a very ugly system, private profits and socialized losses. What we need is private profits, but private losses as well, not the ability to shift them to the public at large through taxes. And I'd like to conclude with a look at the way in which the world has changed because of free market capitalism. The natural condition of the human race is poverty. I had a piece from Cambridge University Press in 2010 on poverty. It was a book on theories of poverty, if you will. And among the questions each author was asked to address was, what are the causes of poverty? I was the only one who said, this is a poorly formulated, nonsensical question. Poverty has no cause. Poverty is what you get when you fail to produce wealth. Wealth has causes. It's like asking what causes darkness, and then positing dark particles or some occult forces. What we need is a theory of light.